Oh, I guess we are live. Let's make sure we're on Facebook as well. Before I get going. Okay, so it looks like we're live. How you doing, guys? So, haven't done a video in a long time. A couple weeks since we restarted up with in-person classes at the school. But I have been getting a lot of inquiries, questions about self-defense using jiu-jitsu as a means of protecting people, and specifically with respect to the situation with all these assaults, this kind of recent wave of assaults that's been getting a lot of media attention against Asian Americans. And so I've been getting a lot of questions from parents and from friends and family about, hey, can we sign up for jiu-jitsu, and is that the best way to kind of protect people from these attacks? And so I was going to do a big long video on this, and but I just realized that it was going to take a lot more time to package that together. And so I just wanted to come out and do a quick video for everybody who might have this type of question, be concerned about their parents or their kids or their wives or girlfriends or what have you. There's kind of good news and bad news with respect to this situation. The bad news is that the victims, the most common victims are elderly folks, and women who are either by themselves or with their kids, maybe with another friend or relative. So the bad news, that's the bad news in the sense of these are people who if that's 65, 75, 85-year-old grandmother, not somebody who's going to be able to come to jiu-jitsu class and get the training necessary to be able to fight off an attacker. And even with respect to younger kids and women who could benefit certainly from learning jiu-jitsu, it's difficult to learn jiu-jitsu quickly enough to be it's not really in the most efficient way. If you're worried about getting attacked now or 6 months from now or a year from now, it takes a long time to get good at jiu-jitsu, and so it's not really the most efficient way to protect yourself, at least in the short term. The other thing about it is that the pattern of these attacks actually render a lot of martial arts training, I won't say useless, but kind of ineffective, in the sense that these guys that are targeting Asian Americans are targeting the weakest, oldest, most vulnerable people. But not only that, they're also kind of, sneak attacking people, sneaking up on them, surprising them, often when, people are at their least guarded and most vulnerable moments. Maybe they're just walking to work or waiting for a bus or what have you. So, I don't really think that even if you are super fit and you've been training jiu-jitsu for a long time, that if someone sneaks up on you and hits you, that you really be able to defend yourself from that kind of attack. Especially if they're coming and you're just totally oblivious. The jiu-jitsu martial arts training isn't really going to help you if you are not aware of your surroundings and prepared for that kind of assault. So that's the bad news, is that in my mind, there's no quick fix. At least from a martial arts self-defense system perspective. The good news is, though, that because these attacks are, they fit a pattern, that they can be prevented in a sense, or maybe avoided is the right word. And so, there's a couple things that stand out to me. I was watching, and reading a lot of video or watching a lot of video and reading a lot of, news articles about this stuff. And, what it is, like I said, it's elderly people, it's women, often by themselves, and these are kind of sneak attacks. So, the first and kind of easiest and hardest way to go about avoiding this situation, if you are concerned about these assaults, is that don't go out by yourself, or don't if you're worried about your wife or your mom or your dad or whoever it is, your kids, make sure they're in a group. And I know that's hard, and I know, you can't always be with those people, every minute of every day, but as much as you can, I would say, if you can encourage people, your kids or your parents to go out in a group, not be off by themselves, I think that's going to go a long way. Having said that, it's not always feasible or viable to, always be in a group, and people like to be independent. So I'm not sure how realistic that is to always expect people to be, in a group of 2 or 3 people when they go out to the grocery store or what have you. So it kind of brings me to the second point, and this is something I really emphasize, and whenever anybody asks me about self-defense, or if I've, whenever I've done a self-defense seminar, I really emphasize this first and foremost, which is, regardless of the level of experience and training that you have in martial arts or self-defense, the most important thing is situational awareness, and not being in a vulnerable state, in the sense that you're distracted, or you're not paying attention to your physical surroundings and the people that are in your physical surroundings. One of the things that really struck me in watching these videos and reading these news stories is that these attacks are taking place in public, often crowded places in broad daylight. Often, I think we fall into this this sense of security, this false sense of security when we're in a crowded place, especially during the daytime. You're waiting for a bus, or you're on a bus, or you're walking down the street, trying to get to work or wherever, going to the mall. And, you let down your guard because you think, oh, there's, 100 people here on the street with me, or, on the bus. And we don't think that that's when an attack can occur. And in this situation, that is where most often they're occurring. And we have this sense of like, oh, we're in a crowd, we're safe. But a crowd can provide cover to somebody who's trying to get near you to attack you, and can also provide cover to that person when they're leaving. The fact of the matter is, when you're waiting for a train, there may be 100 people around you, but nobody's paying attention, right? Everyone's on their cell phone, or maybe they're talking to their friend, or maybe they're reading a newspaper. It's not a good assumption to make that you're safe just because there's people surrounding you. And I'll share a personal anecdote. Back when I lived in New York City, I was out with my wife and my first daughter, who was very young, I think under a year at that time. And we were on a crowded subway platform. There was probably 100 people all around us, and there was this homeless crazy guy who was across the platform. And he started talking to us, and he was going on. It was totally racist, and he was going on about mixing the races, because he saw me and he saw my wife and he saw our kid, and nobody. There was 100 people there. Nobody intervened or seemed to be in the least bit concerned with this guy. They were all talking. It was very noisy, so it wasn't like everyone's being quiet and this guy's shouting. It's everyone's talking, whatever, and this guy's kind of shouting. And so I hear him and I notice him, and I don't think that anyone, if this guy had chosen to come and try to attack us, and this was 20 years ago. This has nothing to do with the current events, but I don't think anybody would have intervened. The common kind of standard operating procedure in New York City is like, don't get into other people's business, and nobody. I don't expect, and you shouldn't expect anybody to intervene on your behalf. In New York, certainly, in big cities, depending on your neighborhood and who's surrounding you, you're just a group of strangers, and I think it's a little bit unreasonable to expect people who don't know you to intervene and protect you against somebody like that we encountered. And we also often see these news stories and we express shock because it's in public, and nobody helps the victim. But I think that's the reality of the situation. So, my point is, when you're out and about, even if you're in a public place, you have to stay alert. You can't be, looking at your phone all the time. You can't be, head down, not looking at anybody. You have to be, alert and aware of everyone who's around you. And, I also wanted to give a couple of, tells or kind of clues that what you should be looking for. One of the big things that when I was worried about this stuff living in New York, is, you have to look at people and see, are they watching you? Are they watching other people, right? Or are they just going about their business or watching a cell phone or whatever? But you have to check. You should check everybody, and you should know when people are coming and going, and you should have like a kind of an idea of a perimeter around you, like a visual, like that you're watching for people. Are they coming near you? Every time when I was in New York and I was getting on and off subways, I'd always scan the subway. I always look up to see who's coming on the subway. There was, back in 2011, maybe it was early 2012, there was a situation on the subways where a guy went through the subway car and just started slashing people with a knife. And I think he killed a couple people. And people are just there. They have their headphones on. They're listening to music. They're looking at their cell phone. They're reading a book. They're not paying. They're totally spaced out. I know. And you're tired. You're trying to get home from work or trying to get to work. Maybe you have a busy day coming up. But you can't assume just because you're in a crowded public place that you're safe. And that's the key message. So again, going back to kind of the what you could look for, people watching you, people looking like they're going to try to intercept you. Maybe they're across the street and they're kind of going out of their way. You got to look up and scan the horizon, so to speak, or the 50 feet in front of you and see who's in front of me. Are they coming towards me? Same thing. If you think somebody's behind you, following you, you've got to that's something you should notice and be able to detect. Any of those types of things. Now, obviously, someone's up in the, in front of you or behind you, and they're making a lot of noise. They're agitated. Maybe they're speaking very loudly. These are things that you have to be aware of, and you have to move out of the way. So those are kind of like kind of the tips I wanted to share with everybody. And look, if you guys, anybody watching has suggestions on this front. This is all just, like I said, I was going to do a video. Actually started shooting it, but I wanted to get something out there really quick. And the idea of situational awareness and not letting your guard down because you're around 100 people in broad daylight, walking down the street. Don't think necessarily that you're safe. Because these people are looking for individuals who are not only elderly and not only women or they're not able to put up a fight, but they're looking for people who aren't paying attention. Almost all these attacks were totally unprovoked surprise attacks. And so, if you can't be with a group of people, then I would encourage, you, if you're out or you're, whoever maybe you're going to talk to your parents or your kids, put down the cell phones, put down the newspaper, put down the book, at least long enough to make sure that you're scanning and registering every new person that's coming and going. And making, and looking at them, is this a person who's acting in a suspicious fashion? And if they are, you gotta take steps. And so, what are the steps to do? Like make sure that you can, where the exits are. If you can put a barrier between you and that person, maybe that's the right answer. If you can leave, maybe that's the right answer. The other thing that I think should be considered is, look, a personal, some sort of self-defense, item, whether it's pepper spray or bear spray or, I don't know, a taser or a stun gun, the only thing that I would say with those things is that you have to make sure that you know how to use them. So if that's something you're going to go and get and try to think like that's going to be helpful to me or give me some level of comfort, that's fine. But you have to know how to use it, right? So I would say go get, if it's pepper spray or bear spray, go get 2 canisters or whatever and practice with one, not on somebody. I mean, if you can get somebody to volunteer, try it out. But, make sure you understand how to operate that item, whatever it is. And then the other thing is that's not a replacement for being situationally aware and being aware of everyone in your physical vicinity. It doesn't matter like I said, how much training you have or, if you have a weapon. That weapon is useless if the person's able to get close enough to you to hit you, and you're not prepared to use that item. So again, this isn't none of these things. I don't care how trained you are or if you have a weapon on you. Those aren't substitutes for being situationally aware. They're really a tool again, whether it's martial arts training, jiu-jitsu, or an actual weapon, that is a tool that you use as a last resort when you can't avoid, right? When you can't escape, when you can't defend yourself, you can't physically remove yourself from the situation. But in order to actually, effectively use that tool, you have to be ready for the situation. You have to be ready for that person. Once they hit you, it's over. You're not gonna be able to get that thing out of your purse or out of your pocket or your bag or backpack or whatever it is. So, I think that's the key takeaway and message. And if people want to chime in, ask questions, put them in the comments. I got to run. I got to teach class coming up. So, I'm going to leave it at that. But I wanted to get that kind of message out there so people understand that, taking martial arts classes is great. Long-term, wonderful thing. But even if you're a black belt in jiu-jitsu, you can't just walk down the street oblivious and expect to be able to defend yourself from these types of attacks, right? And so that goes double for little kids or young women or elderly folks or women who might be out by, with their kids or by themselves. I know it feels very empowering to take some jiu-jitsu lessons, and I encourage you to, explore that and prepare yourself that way. But really, in the immediate term, the best thing you can do is really be aware of everyone around you as much as you can at all times, and be prepared to escape the area or know where help is if you need to go get it. But just don't be taken by surprise. And I think if you are alert, more often than not, these people, they're basically a bunch of cowards. They're not looking for fair fights. They're not looking to attack somebody who's ready to defend themselves, who looks alert, who looks who sees them. That's going to deter them, in many instances, I think, as well, because they're basically looking for the person who's most vulnerable. And often, not only is that just age and sex or gender, but you're not paying attention. It could be anybody, right? It could be anybody. So, just want you guys to all be safe. Like I said, if you have any questions or anything to add, please feel free. If there are questions or comments, I'll come back on tomorrow and we'll continue the discussion. But right now I gotta go. I hope this helps everybody, and stay safe out there, guys. All right.